Hi everyone, and welcome to our fortnightly update on how the events industry is responding to COVID-19. I'm Lauren Demulameester from the business development team here at Higher Space Professional, and will be hosting you today. So we're delighted to announce the release of our Safer Event Accreditation white paper today. We're really excited to share the news and get this out for the industry. Venues and event organizers can find out how to get accredited through the provided link below. So today I'm delighted to be joined again by Simon Hughes, who's actually recently been made chair of the British Visits and Events Partnership. So huge congratulations, Simon. And for the first time on our bi-weekly digest is Richard Groves, who is director of Smart Group, who are dynamic and experienced events company specializing in corporate hospitality and catering. So if you'd like to pose any questions to the speakers, you can do so in the comments below the live stream or using the hashtag HSPresents, and we will be picking those up towards the end as always. So today, main topic obviously is finding out the latest government guidelines and kind of what we can expect moving forward. But first off, we would love to get a word from Simon about his appointment as chair of the BVEP. What are your big goals for your tenure, and how will you approach the challenges, and how can everyone help?
Well, thanks, Lauren. I think the biggest issue right now, obviously, is just managing our way and supporting our partners through the current crisis. So that's front and center where our energy and focus is. And I have to say, the partners, trade associations across the piece are really working hard for their members at the moment and really coming up with some great solutions, great support. And it's a very tough time for all of them. So our job is to very much kind of focus that and make sure that the issues they're raising are being heard in the right places across government, not just through the DCMS, which is our main kind of conduit into the UK government. The other thing is this change, and my arrival as chairman has been part of a long-term project. And we mustn't lose sight of the fact that one day we will be back in a normal world. And so the BVEP is going through a process of redesigning itself slightly. We've got a new executive committee in place. We are establishing working groups, and we intend to kind of keep that going. Once we get out of this crisis, we'll extend our working groups. At the moment, we've got one on skills, we've got one on research and business data, because we think we're going to need to have some really robust data when we start arguing the case about how to support the industry in 6 months or maybe 12 months' time. But we'll continue to look at developing working groups that are based on what our partners are interested in. And I think, making sure that we really do land the voice of the industry as a concept and really make people aware of what it is that live in all its forms brings. It will remain my main goal, is to make sure that our voice is heard and our partners and associations and supporters understand where we're going and how we're going to get there, and what we're doing to kind of make their lives better in this really challenging time at the moment. So yeah, that's what I hope to be able to get. And I've got a fantastic team around me too. We've worked closely together. I've still got Michael Hurst as the immediate past chair as part of the team. And I think the only other thing I'd add is it probably helps a little with the delineation between the BVP, the Business Visits and Events Partnership, and the EIB, the Event Industry Board, which we have representation on, of course. So we got two quite interesting kind of vehicles now to drive forward. And that was definitely part of the thinking in handing the chairmanship over to me, so that Michael remains chair of the EIB. And we've got that separation now, which I think is going to be really useful, really useful.
Yeah, no, definitely sounds fantastic. We'll be keeping an eye out for your great work. And so what has the government recently announced, or what are they about to announce, that will affect the events industry?
Well, I think the most immediate work is the kind of guidance that's being done to get people back into the workplace. So we've seen BEIS has already announced kind of general guidance, which is referenced in the work. So a number of task forces have now been set up, and each one of those has got kind of subgroups underneath it working on particular sectors within the industry. So it's early days, but I think there was a meeting yesterday, in fact, when we were looking at the kind of hospitality. We were looking at some visitor attractions, indoor and outdoor attractions, and also conference centres and business visits. So we've reached out to lots of our partners, and also globally. We're very mindful that this isn't just a kind of UK issue, and that some of our competitors will be developing protocols and guidelines. We need to look at those carefully, because this is all going to be about the competition to inspire confidence for people to come back to events. And I'm pretty certain, all of us have seen there's an appetite for people to get back to some kind of normality. Sometimes that might not be a good thing, given the kind of presence still of coronavirus. But there's definitely a feeling that some people do want to go back. This morning I heard, the stats, 1 in 3 people at the beginning of the lockdown were very worried about getting COVID-19. Now it's 1 in 6. So people aren't as worried, and that means their behavior is going to reflect that. So we need to look internationally and also domestically at the best practice, the best guidance, the best protocols. And our instinct is that the government is going to be very top line with some kind of basic principles, but then look for each industry sector to come up with specific guidelines for the kind of business that they run. So you can imagine if you're running a conference center compared to, say, an interesting historic or unique venue, the kind of attention to detail in terms of the guidance you'll be following might be quite different, just because of the density and volume of people that you can carry in your venue. So I think there's going to be quite a lot of detail, and all of that will be founded in kind of a proper and thorough risk assessment. And all businesses of all types are being asked to do that. And that's quite correct. And of course, right there, risk assessment for us in the event world, that's our bread and butter. That's what we do all the time. So that, I hope, will form part of the kind of confidence building and the appeal that we can make, not just to domestic audiences, but also to international audiences in the fullness of time. That we are very good at making sure we're covering all the bases in terms of safety, in terms of health, in terms of sanitization.
I'll just pop in on that risk assessment thing, Simon, which I think is going to set it apart from normal risk assessment, which is safety and not tripping over wires and being able to get in and egress from the building safely. This is a confidence thing. You can do a risk assessment of how close people can stand and where they get their food from and where the water stations are and how they sit and all that sort of thing. But it's presenting that to the public or to the delegates to say, I feel confident that is safe enough for me to come pick up this invisible virus. And that, I think, is a slightly different question that we've got to answer. That our risk assessment, absolutely, all the smart venues and every venue we work in, the Natural History Museum or magazine on the Greenwich Peninsula, will all have their protocols. But it's not just getting over will the health and safety officer from Deutsche Bank be happy? It's will every 500 member delegate be comfortable about coming to that venue? And that's asking them a different question. That's having to give them a different answer. But you're right. That's the confidence building thing we've got to do.
See, and the big challenge too is that, and if you look at the variety of events that we're covering in a way, that's one of the big challenges. There's so many different types of events, so one size won't fit all. But also, if you look at the innovation that's taking place too, I think one of the problems that we've definitely got is, for example, food service is being dealt with by bays. We're talking to DCMS. And yet actually, when you talk to some of the big caterers involved in conference centres and exhibitions, they also supply in retail, and they also supply in different settings, and they might use some of those techniques and some of those processes and protocols in order to get the right kind of service, the new kind of service that's required in venues across the country. So we need to kind of be careful how we draw all of this together, because there will be, to your point, a lot of innovation, I think, in the way we are and the way we do things. It could be, we suddenly see, just the way, I mean, this sounds basic, but just toilet facilities changing fundamentally into something else, like a sanitization area or whatever. But we've got to be open to all of that. You're absolutely right. It's not about the basic H&S kind of audit.
And there'll be also a level of comfort and safety and security that we work to, but that can't detract from the enjoyment of the event. You know, talking about the restaurant business. Jeremy King, who owns the Wolseley and Delaunay and others, he was saying that he opens restaurants to create an environment that he would like to go to and have a meal with his wife. Sitting behind a plastic screen with your waiting staff with a visor on and gloves, 4 meters from everybody else, it's not a convivial environment to sit and have dinner and pay for it. So he wouldn't open under those rules. Whereas at a venue, let's say at the QE2 Centre, or if they're Natural History Museum and having a conference, then people need to feel safe and secure and know that they can go and wash their hands and know that everything's been disinfected twice beforehand, but still feel comfortable to be there and then actually enjoy the experience. It's not a deal to work their way through the day. And it's going to be an amazing balance, but we are very creative business. You know, we will take things from different disciplines of, as you said, retail, a lot more sealed meals rather than buffets. So you get your bento box and that's yours. It's all sealed up. It comes from a very clean kitchen. Job done.
I mean, in fact, I think the biggest challenge in a way for us all is how we get people in to these events that we might be staging. So the instruction is please use walk or cycle. I can just imagine anybody going, right, we've got a lovely event at Excel, and everybody in West London going, oh great, I'm gonna walk and cycle. No, I'm not. But what is the choice? And how confident are people to say, okay, I'm going to jump on the overground or train or jump on the tube. I think that's one of the really big challenges, and I think I've mentioned it before on these sessions that we haven't yet seen anybody from the Department of Transport popping up at the Tourism Emergency Response Group meetings, and there's probably a reason for that. But again, we prided ourselves in London of being really sustainable and having great access by public transport for lots of our key venues. It's been a feature of what we've done. So how do we get how are we going to get around that? Another area where a lot of kind of creative thinking and innovation is probably going to be required, I suspect.
There's a piece in the Higher Space White Paper document that people were filling in about how comfortable they were going to events, which was to stagger the beginning. Don't have it all starting at 8:45 in Westminster. It starts at 10:30, so you can, if you've got to come by tube, you come hopefully out of whatever rush hour there will be in the next 4 months, and sort of stagger the return journeys as well. Possibly that way. Well, some of it, but I wouldn't have going on a tube at the moment.
Right. In fact, we had a BVEP partners meeting last week, virtually, obviously, and the HBAA were talking about one of their hotel members had been asked by a developer if they could give them some room nights so they could put all of their people in hotels rather than having them travel at all. But unfortunately, because of current restrictions, that wasn't possible, so the development has stalled. But that might be another way of doing it, is actually to work with hotels, and rather than having people travel on the day, come up in the evening the night before, so they're going into kind of secure, sanitized rooms, and then they avoid the whole kind of rush hour issue, and can travel kind of out their leisure rather than and during peak times when it is crowded. So again, a combination of looking through our ecosystem in a way and going, oh, actually, we could work with them over there and get these guys to help over here. And so I think there will be lots of things like that going on, I suspect.
Yeah. So obviously we've heard that actually, some businesses may be open in part in early June, which is actually just a couple of days away. So what do we think that's going to be looking like, and how is that going to affect us in our sector? Obviously, it's going to be the smaller bars opening up at first, and as you mentioned, like, experience is a key thing. How do you guys foresee this rolling out?
Shall I pick that up, Richard? I think the for most of the event sector, we're looking at kind of July as being the opening, and that's very much aligned with the kind of three phases that the Prime Minister set out a couple of weeks ago, before we all got diverted by other people's comings and goings. Anyway, so we're looking at July. We know that a couple of people have already kind of got plans for doing things in July, almost as kind of tests. And I think that's what we're going to see. That there is again, in terms of messaging and communication, I haven't seen any clear route map, and I'm staggered to find myself thinking, how can you have a route map and then everything is very tiny steps? Because a route map tells you where you're going and what the destination is and how long the journey is. I don't see that yet. So it will be tiny steps. It'll be small incremental steps, and anything that is done will be, really carefully looked at, and any kind of impacts that it's having in terms of the R number or anything like that. Because we've seen that today, haven't we? With news coming out of South Korea, they opened up nightclubs and suddenly the daily numbers have gone up again. So we're going to have to be very, very careful and very attentive to the impacts that we have. So it'll be small incremental steps, sharing the learnings from those, and all of that I think will be happening in July. I think that's when we'll see it. We'll see the beginning of activity. But a lot of people still hanging on to their, hopefully Q3, Q4. Talking to venues, they've still got bookings. They've still got people who are ready to come back in, dependent on the situation, which we don't, we have no control over. I love the new government advice is control the virus. With what?
I think you're right. It will be incremental steps. I think the government are unaware of how to open up the hospitality industry, which is why they're pushing it further back down the road, because it seems to be the most contentious. They list places of worship, hospitality, and leisure all together. So we're the same with gyms and churches. And I believe that because they don't know, they'll be expecting us as an industry to almost to lead them on with our operational aspect. So they will say, we think from July you might be able to do it on a smaller basis, but only have a certain number of people in your operation, and that could be in how big your operation is. Some bars can have 50 people standing in it with great distancing, and other bars can only have 3 in it, or little coffee shops can only have 1 person in it. But I do believe there's a latent desire for it to happen, and I do believe that people are going to very swiftly embrace the opportunity to go and do it. And I was saying to Simon before we came on that there's a pub on Wandsworth Common, where I live, that's been opening up as a takeaway. And we're absolutely rammed. They're queuing around the block. And then on the Common, there was hundreds of people, not just dozens, hundreds of people drinking pints of takeaway beer. So the desire is there. People were, for 5 days until the police then cleared the Common, it was fine business for them, which gives me confidence as an event organizer that people are either tiring of it or think that the peak has gone, so therefore it doesn't apply to them anymore. And being in an environment with people they might know, it's safer. So therefore they will potentially be able to come back to events quickly. Weddings will pick up because family members will feel more comfortable with each other. And then the corporate commercial stuff will come in a bit later. But Simon, you're right about Q3 and 4s. We are looking at our diary at the moment for all the jobs that were postponed from May, June, being postponed until September. Now they're being postponed again until either later in the year or no fixed date at the moment. And potentially, we'll talk ourselves up at the end of this meeting, but potentially it could be the whole of the back end of this year is as quiet as we fear it could be. And then maybe Christmas will not be the big Christmas party season. So that could be almost one whole calendar year of business which people like Smart and the big venues have lost. But it's back to confidence, in fact, getting the host to have the confidence to invite the guests and the guests the confidence.
And I think the other thing that is important is the type and variety of events that we might see coming back in, because in a way, if we talk about the experience that people enjoy, the experience of going onto Wandsworth Common with a pint of beer in your hand that you've just bought from a pub as a takeaway, we're all about the experience. So actually, I would encourage people, say in the outdoor sector, where the festival people have just taken an absolute hammering, they will be looking at how they can get some events going so that people can actually genuinely remember what it's like to enjoy the experience of an event, even if that is, I don't know, just a mass kite flying or hot air balloon or something like that, where people can go, oh, look, this is what it feels like to be out and about. This is what it feels like to to come to an event. And you know, I certainly know lots of partners in that area are really working hard to think about, you know, the winter market season, how they might be able to do that. And markets again opening early, which is great news, I think, for that slice of our business, our sector, and encouraging people to, you know, to get back out into shopping areas. That's good news, I think, for us as well, because it's starting to kind of unlock people's latent desire to just not be at home. They can be outside and hopefully be alert, whatever that means.
I think we're used to queuing now. You know, we never used to queue to go to the supermarket, but that is part of the daily trip now. You stand with 20 people in front of you with 6 feet between you, and you think this is a hugely long queue, but actually if they go in phases of 10, it actually goes very quickly. And people will have a queue for some trainers or a queue.
Yeah. Or you might find yourself queuing to get on a pre-booked slot to get on a train to go into the middle of town. Possibly, I don't know. So, yeah, I think you're right, and that's where this kind of we're all in it together thing is so important. I think if we lose that, and my instinct talking to all the partners in the BVEP too is the messaging and the language and the communication around this is so critical. Again, coming back to that confidence thing, inspiring confidence with our guests and our delegates. But also longer term, I think, you know, we mentioned this earlier, the international situation. There we have some real challenges because we've got people who are out of the blocks already. If you look at Germany, if you look at what's going on in Australia, you look at places like Singapore, they are now doing things, even China, in terms of trade shows and business-to-business stuff. They're doing things which we can only hope to do in maybe 2 or 3 months' time. So we need to be aware that we have international competitors who will be using their advantage while we kind of work our way through whatever lies ahead of us. And you know, that makes all the kind of debates about testing and tracing and tracking and local shutdowns again, that's so vital to not giving the wrong message to people out there.
And so how can event businesses then prepare for what's to come?
Shall I go for this first?
Yeah.
It's protocols. So it's like 4 strands. So the first of all is to be omnipresent in the marketplace still. So I've been through 3 recessions, and the way you cope with it is you market your way back out of it and make sure everybody realizes it's there and you're open for business. And we've kept a tight team on sales and marketing running through all this, but quite a lot of people are furloughed, but they're working in the office before that from home, making sure that the message is out there. So when people want to find you, they can still find you. That you've got enough people to react well to the inquiries. People will want things turned around quickly, because once they've taken the decision, the FD has said yes, and the human resources guy has said yes, this event can go ahead, then they want to get moving on quite quickly. So we will need to be working very closely with production companies and venues, and it's a swift response and a cogent response to make sure that offer is clear. Then it's the confidence boosting modus operandi, it's the protocols, it's the health and safety to make sure that we understand what concerns people will have and we've addressed them head on. We've exceeded what people will expect us to be able to do. So, but also make it relevant to the type of event. So how many events should we be tempted testing people on the way in? Should we ask people to register pre-event with a health check? Say, yeah, we are clear of this, or we've had it, or whatever. Things you need to worry about. And then the delivery. The delivery will be, again, fixed to the protocols that have been promised to the organisers from a venue perspective. So the ins and outs, the break rooms, picking up the water fountains, where you sit. Everything has been considered, planned, and made obvious, and it's monitored and secured. So on site, there are people there to help quell any fears of who's touched that glass before me, or where do I go and wash my hands when I go to for it is all feasible. You know, if you set up a production kitchen in the middle of a field, it is as safe and as clean virtually as a one in a production kitchen that's there as a production unit forever. we do this. We can create safe, clean environments. Particularly from my catering background, we are a very clean industry. Everything has to be considered on a journey through process of buying, delivering, cooking, storing, transporting, serving. We do that anyway, and ever since mad cow and salmonella, it's been part of the protocol and the way we work. So on the food service aspect of it, it's just going to be a slightly different way of doing it, whether it's sealed boxes per individual, so the initial bento box, got your name on it, it's been sealed in a clean production kitchen. No one's been inside it since. That's your safe lunch. And the waiting staff may or may not be required to wear masks at that point, in which case you make them attractive, interesting masks. So they could be almost branded if you want, or the name of the waiting staff on it, or a lovely material that is lined with the right moisture repellent, but make it part of uniform. So make them all look like doctors. And I believe that will then, if you have those four things in play, and you make enough noise about it and convince people that you are taking it seriously, and these are the peaks and troughs of the process that you've leveled out and made it as safe as possible, and you've given the go ahead by HM government to say you can have together with the protocols, that you're carrying that price through, and it's going to be a safe event. And I think if we get those four things in place, we should be good. The business will begin to build.
Yeah, completely agree. Simon, do you have anything to add quickly before we turn to the questions?
I would add only one further thought, and Richard touched on it, and that's the whole issue of furlough. In terms of getting people ready, having the right number of people around, we need to keep our eye very, very carefully on how furlough might be extended, particularly in the event sector, because there's a lot of debate and discussion amongst many businesses in the event sector about how this is going to work. So we need to keep right across that, because if we don't get going as fast as we want, we might need to go beyond October into November, December. We need to have our case ready for that. We need to have the numbers ready to deploy. So I think that's the only other thing I think we need to be very careful about, is how that might happen. Because locking down was easy, wasn't it? Locking down was everybody stopped. Yeah. Opening up different sectors, different parts of the country, different types of industry, it's a completely different ball game. And we know that our industry has not had the kind of best, or it isn't an easy industry to kind of look at and go, oh yeah, them, because we're so attached to the supply chains in so many different ways, and we work in so many different sectors. So we've got to be really careful about that. But I'm looking forward to some questions now. That'll be good.
Yes, thank you. So yes, now questions too that are streaming in. So Olga has asked, do you feel that UK is somehow behind protocols and guidance being published by other European countries?
Yes.
Simon, maybe that's a good one for you.
Yeah, no, I think it is, and it's just a kind of the cycle of what's been happening. Other countries are 3 weeks, 4 weeks ahead of us effectively, but also other countries have benefited from different regimes. So if you look at you look at Australia, would be one good example, or New Zealand actually. They've approached it in a slightly different way. There's mounting criticism about the way the UK government has approached this situation, with the lack of urgency and time being lost early on. So I think, yeah, other places have done well. And the other thing too, which I think is part of that, is that there is a difference between the kind of centralized control that you have from central government and the ability for local authorities or local regions to operate in a slightly different way. So Germany, because of its state arrangements, individual states doing things in a slightly individual way, I think they've got more flexibility in their system than we have. And we need to bring together both the control from central government with the delivery of local government, particularly in tracing activity. We need to bring that together much, much quicker, I think, in order to help us move to the point that other countries, we're seeing other countries have reached already.
Yeah, thank you for that. So second question, Hannah, what do you think the trends will be for traveling to the events themselves, and how responsible is the business organizing the event for that risk? Maybe one for you, Richard?
I'll take the second part of that first, the responsibility of the organising company. It's going to be hard for organisers and hosts, because if you look at the, let's say, Christmas parties for a moment, and look at Christmas parties, there will be, it's a discretionary spend anyway, to even though we argue with that it's a relatively expensive way of thanking people and rewarding them for the year's work. However, the host has got to be very careful that to invite someone to a social environment that is like a really, really large pub. It has to be incredibly safe, because if anything happens, then the gates are all up. That and on the corporate side of it, then to say, okay, instead of having this meeting online with 150 people like we're having at the moment, we're going to have it at Illuminated Science Museum. We're all going to sit in the same room and have a lovely meeting together and swap stories. Again, the host, are they totally responsible for what happens, or are they've got to put their trust in the venue, they've got to put trust in the production and the catering partner, they've got to put the trust in the guests to not come if they've experienced any symptoms recently and know they shouldn't be in a room with 150 other people. If someone did contract it and they traced it back to the fact that they got it in the Science Museum on that particular day, it's a legal position when they could be sued, and that's going to stop people if they think it could be. I don't have a legal answer to that. I don't know whether you invite someone and their responsibility to go. It's like if you open up a theatre and you put on a production in the theatre and people come to it and one person catches COVID-19 when they're there, is that the National Theatre's problem, or was it the person who's liable to get it anyway because of the symptoms that haven't come out on the night they went to the theatre? It's something that will have to be addressed, and something that I think a lot of legal brains and human resources brains have to think about quite carefully, because that's the only way we can release it. If people think they can hold an event, they can invite delegates, but ultimately they're not going to be held responsible. What's the first part of the question again? I can't remember.
So the first part was, what do you think the trends will be for traveling to the events themselves?
We've touched on this. Simon mentioned maybe staying overnight. The hotel industry would love people using their hotel bedrooms, even a discounted rate probably. And we've mentioned staggering the start time, so it's not 9 o'clock and finishing at 5. It starts late in the day and finishes late. People are using the tube at the moment. It's a necessity for people, trained for necessity for people. People can't drive necessarily all the way to Excel, or they can't drive in central London and park outside of B&A or whatever from the event. So people are going to have to travel in public transport at some point. And it will have to come back. It's like events will have to come back, like social engagement, like gyms will have to come back, and swimming pools. These things can't just be closed down forever. The tube is there, and I think people will wear masks for quite a long time. But you're going to get 500 people on the Bakerloo line in the morning at some point in the next 5 months. It's got to happen. People will be going back to work.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Any thoughts on the transport issue?
Well, I think you're right. I think it will. The new normal, whatever that means, will kind of reassert itself, and I think probably taking steps like masks and changing times of travel will be important. I wonder how many people, though, have looked at this opportunity and gone, actually, this massive piece of office space we hold in the middle of London, which is costing us a fortune to run, do we need quite so much of that now? Which would help overall in terms of reducing the number of people who commute in and out on a daily basis. So I think there might be some offset there, perhaps, in the future. And also, of course, I think the other thing we haven't actually mentioned, but might be a big part of this, is hybrid events where you are perhaps talking to a smaller number of people in the room live, but you might be reaching a much bigger audience because you're taking it out to them. You're going to them rather than coming to you. So I think that's another big part of the kind of travel organisation confidence safety thing, definitely.
The people that can get there safely and easily can do, But if you've got
Yes.
some boar and wood on the train, you don't want to do that, then you link it.
Yeah.
All right, so for the next question, Ella has asked, do you feel like Europe will see the return of big events? So this is 500 plus in 2020. It would be great to see it, especially as Asia is coping with these very well, and they've already hosted some expos.
I hope so, because our business is predicated on large events, and we operate Battersea Evolution in Battersea Park, which is a 2,000-seater venue. And on one hand, that sounds appallingly big, and you want to go to an event with 2,000 people. However, it gives us the flexibility of having much smaller events in there that gives much more space for maneuver, and you can have a networking event for 500 people, and you don't feel lost in it, but you have got the social spacing. I think it'll come back down to the confidence rate. Back to what I said about the 4 planks of keeping event businesses going, is that you've got the organisers have got to have the confidence that their staff and delegates are safe as far as humanly possible, and that the value of holding that event outweighs the whatever small risk it might be in bringing people together. And until that circle is squared, we can't guarantee that September, October, November are going to happen in any way. We've still got people holding events for October and November. We've still got a good order book for December, and we're telling people to hold off postponing or cancelling at the moment until we know a little bit more after summer. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to book, and there's lots of venues with space, so it's not a race to get the best dates necessarily at the moment. It's a hold the nerve, let's see what happens, let's see what the government says, what the health implications are, what has happened in Germany, what has happened in Australia, what has happened in France when they start opening up their venues, when Frankfurt Mess starts opening, or the FS starts again, or whatever it might be. That, I think, will then lead the conversation about whether they start events suitable.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with everything Richard said. I also think, as I mentioned earlier, other types of events that might attract 500 plus. It could be a festival of lights, or I know it's not very sustainable these days, but it could be just a bloody good firework display somewhere where everybody's on Wandsworth Common watching it or something. You'd definitely get more than 500. But again, that's all about recreating that experience, that shared experience, and reminding people how important events are to us as kind of social human beings. We like getting together, we like doing things, we like sharing things. We've got to remind people about that. But yes, all of that predicated by the fact is we're in a tricky place, and we really can't control the virus. It's gonna be around for a while, and we need to follow the rules in order to cope with it. I think that's very important.
Yeah. So actually, Mark Bannister has quite a good question following up on this one. Do you foresee event formats shifting drastically from larger delegate numbers across multiple day events compared to smaller delegate numbers attending single-day events? And what impact will this have on the supply chain and costing models?
It's going to have a massive impact. If you look at places like, any one of our large venues in London, central London, under current regime, the capacity probably makes most of them untenable. And that's a harsh reality. If you go from somewhere that's 2,500 people down to 350 people, how's that going to work economically? Is it worth opening up? Can you cover your overheads with those kind of numbers? So I think we are going to see a change. But I think, part of that might be much more bespoke, much more focused, and, having a higher kind of value attached to it as a result. But also, I think there's some really good stuff being talked about, the kind of benefits of the large scale trade shows and big exhibitions, where actually utilizing space, rather like Richard's pointed out, Battersea Evolution, utilizing large space in order to create really good physical distancing could be one of the routes in. And those trade shows and those big exhibitions are about what we really need, and that is economic benefit to the UK to help us cope with the demands that are being put on us as a result of this catastrophic crisis. So I'd be looking at the larger events being really geared and maybe even supported by government or run for government in order to encourage investors, encourage overseas visitors back to the UK in a confident way that actually has a really good financial impact for everybody involved.
Good morning, Mark, by the way. I pick up everything that Simon said. The supply chain are hugely affected by this. Every person who supplies ice or flowers or temporary staff or light, whatever it might be, are waiting for the venues to lead us out of this. Because we need a venue to have an event, so that comes first. I can imagine the finance team at the Best Evolution going mad when I just said about we can fit 500 people into 2,000 space. How we can afford to put it on. And I'm not an advocate in any way of discounting at this period, because venues, because everybody needs to still be earning money to get themselves out of this, so they stay stable and self-funded going through. And I think realistic pricing should be the way forward. I don't think heavy discounting should be the way forward at all, and I don't think it's helped in the past. It's the base of the product. Too fierce competition doesn't help anybody, because still companies that fall over because they're not making money. However, if you've got a venue and you want to kickstart this business, then you do need to be creative about how you fill it. And you might have to say, these are my fixed overheads, this is exactly what I need to earn, this is my profit level that I'm comfortable with, I want. However, what can you do creatively around that to get that event? So if you've got an event for 500 people in Battersea in October, then again, it's a great case study, as Simon was saying before, of showing people this is safe, this works, there's lots of in and outs, you can rest, happen well, transport links are great, and obviously, no one suffers on the basis of it. So that leads the way to getting more and more events in the back end of this year and the beginning of next. So I think it's a realism we'll have to kick in on how these large venues and are about in a particular period. It is an extremely unprecedented event that we can't look to take off the shelf to show how to do it, how to trade their way up it. We just have to think how we make sure that people get confidence.
Yeah, no, completely. So thank you so much. So I think we have one question left. Obviously, we get this one all the time, recurringly. So I thought maybe since we're running over time, just kind of one, quick word answer, a short sentence. So Amy Turner has asked, what are you feeling most positive about for the moment?
The weather.
I must agree with you on that one. What about you, Richard? Maybe one with what's happening?
I'm feeling very positive about the attitude of people in the business. I was a little bit candy covered, but I went round very carefully, physically distant from these people, but I went round one Friday ago to deliver some gifts to some long-standing agents we were supposed to be entertaining last weekend. And everybody was pleased to see someone from the industry face-to-face, across their garden wall to say hello for half an hour and have a chat about it. Everybody is keen to get back to work, needs to get back to work, wants to get back to work. We're a people business, we're a social business. And I think the fact that everybody is still out there just waiting to get it to start again, willing it to start again, and how can best make it start again, is the most encouraging thing I can do.
For sure. And I think on that note, thank you so much for joining us today. Some really good insights, some really great tips for our audience. Thank you both for joining us, and thank you to all of our audience who are listening in. So as we mentioned, you can find a link below to our Safer Events white paper, which has just been released today. And this should help give you some ideas and some guidelines on how to make your event or venue safer moving forward. So we look forward to having you on the next live stream, which will be taking place in a fortnight time on the 10th of June. But other than that, we'll be hosting the second of our 3-part virtual event series discussing business and events in a post-pandemic world next Wednesday on the 3rd of June. Please follow us on our social channels at HireSpace to see the details and find out more. And as always, if you have any questions for our panelists next week or just have questions, please email us on covid19@hirespace.com or message us on social media handles at HireSpace. Thank you so much and hope to see you soon.